Here is something that almost nobody tells people between the ages of 60 and 80, and it might be one of the most encouraging things you hear today. Aging is not a uniform experience. Two people can be exactly the same age and be living in completely different physical and cognitive realities, not primarily because of luck or genetics, but because of a set of specific, measurable abilities that either stayed strong or quietly faded over time. We are going to talk today about 5 of those abilities that researchers, physicians, and longevity scientists consistently point to as the true markers of exceptional aging, the signs that someone between 60 and 80 is not just surviving the years but genuinely thriving in them. And here is what makes this different from everything else you may have seen about aging. These are not things you need expensive equipment or medical tests to assess. They are things you can evaluate for yourself, right now, today, and what you discover is going to tell you something genuinely meaningful about where your body and your mind actually stand. Stay until the very end, because the 5th ability is the one that surprises almost everyone, and it is also the one that research suggests may be the single most powerful predictor of how well someone is truly aging between 60 and 80. Before we get into the 5 abilities, let's take a moment to reframe the conversation about aging itself, because most people carry a mental model of aging that is both inaccurate and unnecessarily discouraging. The dominant cultural narrative around aging between 60 and 80 is one of gradual, inevitable decline, a slow surrender of abilities, independence, and vitality that there is little to be done about. This narrative is not supported by the research on what healthy aging actually looks like. What scientists who study longevity, functional medicine, and geriatric health have found is that the trajectory of aging is far more variable and far more influenced by lifestyle, habits, and mindset than most people realize. The biological aging of the body is real and cannot be reversed entirely, but the rate at which specific abilities decline, and in many cases whether they decline at all, is powerfully influenced by factors that are within a person's control. This means that what we are about to discuss is not just a checklist of things to check off. It is a framework for understanding what exceptional aging actually looks like and what creates it. The first ability is balance and coordination, specifically the ability to stand on one leg with eyes closed for at least 10 seconds. This sounds deceptively simple, but it is one of the most powerful single physical assessments that exists for people in the 60 to 80 age range. The reason this matters so much comes from the complexity of what balance actually requires at the physiological level. Maintaining stable balance, particularly with eyes closed so that visual compensation is removed, requires your vestibular system in the inner ear, your proprioceptive system in the muscles and joints of your feet and legs, your cerebellum which coordinates movement, and multiple areas of the brain involved in motor control to all be communicating and functioning effectively at the same time. When any one of these systems begins to degrade significantly, balance suffers. And balance matters enormously for people between 60 and 80 because falls are one of the most serious health risks in this age group, with fall-related injuries being a leading cause of hospitalization, loss of independence, and in some cases the beginning of a cascade of health problems that significantly reduces life quality and lifespan. People who can maintain solid balance with eyes closed are demonstrating that multiple interconnected neural and physical systems are still functioning at a genuinely high level for their age, and this coordination of systems reflects overall neurological health in a way that reaches well beyond just the ability to stand on one foot. The second ability is grip strength, specifically having a hand grip that is strong enough to open jars, carry bags, and perform everyday tasks without difficulty or pain. Grip strength is one of the most well-studied biomarkers of overall health and aging in the research literature, and the findings are striking. Multiple large-scale studies have found that grip strength is associated with overall mortality risk, cardiovascular health, cognitive function, and long-term physical independence in ways that make it one of the most informationally dense single measurements available from a simple physical assessment. The reason grip strength reflects so much about overall health is that it is a proxy for overall muscle quality and systemic health. Muscle is not simply the tissue that moves limbs. It is a metabolically active organ that produces hormones affecting inflammation, metabolism, insulin sensitivity, and even brain function. Maintaining muscle quality across the body, which grip strength reflects, is associated with better outcomes across virtually every chronic disease category that becomes more common after 60, and it is associated with better cognitive performance and slower cognitive decline over time. People between 60 and 80 who maintain strong grip strength are almost always people who remain physically active in meaningful ways, and that physical activity is itself one of the most powerful protective factors for nearly every dimension of health at this age. The third ability is the capacity to recall and use new information without writing it down immediately. Not ancient memories from decades past, which often remain well preserved even in people with significant cognitive changes, but recent information. The name of someone you met this week. The plot of a television program you watched last night. The details of a conversation you had earlier in the day. The ability to hold and retrieve recent information reflects the health of the hippocampus and the prefrontal cortex, the brain regions most central to short-term memory encoding and working memory. These are also the brain regions most vulnerable to the earliest changes of Alzheimer's disease and age-related cognitive decline. People between 60 and 80 who retain genuinely sharp recent memory, who can remember details, follow multi-step instructions without losing track, and hold new information across the day without it slipping away, are demonstrating that these brain regions are maintaining their function at a level that a significant proportion of their age group is no longer able to match. This is worth knowing not as a source of anxiety for those whose recent memory has slipped, but as a genuine indicator of brain health for those who still possess it, and as motivation for the lifestyle habits that research has most consistently shown to support memory preservation. The fourth ability is cardiovascular endurance, specifically the ability to walk briskly for 20 to 30 minutes without needing to stop, without significant pain, and without breathlessness that feels disproportionate to the effort. Walking is the most natural human movement, and yet by the time many people reach their late 60s and 70s, sustained brisk walking has quietly become something they can no longer manage. The cardiovascular and respiratory systems decline with age, lung capacity reduces, arterial elasticity decreases, and the heart becomes less efficient at meeting the oxygen demands of sustained activity. But the rate of this decline is enormously variable, and people who have maintained regular aerobic activity throughout their 60s and 70s show dramatically better cardiovascular and respiratory function than age-matched sedentary peers. The ability to sustain brisk walking for 20 to 30 minutes reflects not just cardiovascular health but also the health of the joints and muscles of the lower body, the efficiency of the respiratory system, and the regulatory capacity of the autonomic nervous system. It is a holistic physical capacity that, when preserved between 60 and 80, reflects a body that has maintained its functional resilience in ways that protect against a wide range of age-related health risks. The fifth ability, and the one that surprises almost everyone, is maintaining genuine enthusiasm for at least one thing in daily life, whether that is a hobby, a relationship, a creative pursuit, a cause, or a purpose that makes getting up in the morning feel meaningful rather than obligatory. This might sound less clinical than the other four abilities, but the research behind it is as compelling as the research behind any of the physical measures. Studies on longevity and healthy aging have found that a sustained sense of purpose and the ability to experience genuine positive emotion, enthusiasm, curiosity, and engagement is one of the most powerful predictors of healthy aging outcomes across multiple dimensions. People who maintain a strong sense of purpose between 60 and 80 live longer, maintain cognitive function better, report higher life satisfaction, stay more physically active, sleep better, and have stronger immune function than those who have lost their sense of purpose and whose daily life has become primarily a matter of enduring time. The biological mechanisms connecting purpose and enthusiasm to health outcomes are multiple and well documented. Purpose influences stress hormone levels, supports immune regulation, drives the physical and social activity that protects both body and brain, and appears to activate brain regions associated with reward, learning, and neuroplasticity in ways that may slow cognitive aging. For someone between 60 and 80 who still wakes up genuinely interested in the day ahead, who has things they look forward to and pursuits that engage them, this enthusiasm is not incidental to their health. It may be one of the most important contributors to it. Now let's talk about why these 5 specific abilities were chosen, because the answer reveals something important about how aging actually works at the systems level. Each of these 5 abilities reflects the health of a different but interconnected dimension of the aging body and brain. Balance and coordination reflect neurological integration. Grip strength reflects musculoskeletal and metabolic health. Recent memory reflects cognitive neurological health. Cardiovascular endurance reflects the health of the heart, lungs, and vascular system. And purpose and enthusiasm reflect the psychological and neuroendocrine dimensions of healthy aging. Together, they paint a picture of the whole person that no single measurement could capture, and they reflect the understanding that aging well is not about any one system performing well in isolation. It is about the interconnected functioning of physical, neurological, cardiovascular, and psychological systems all being maintained above a threshold that allows for genuine independence, vitality, and quality of life. Let's also spend a moment on what the research tells us about why some people in the 60 to 80 age range maintain these 5 abilities while others lose them. There is also a concept in aging science that deserves mention here, called biological age versus chronological age. Chronological age is simply how many years have passed since birth. Biological age is a measure of how old the body's cells, tissues, and systems actually are in terms of their functional capacity and molecular health, regardless of what the calendar says. Research using various biological markers has consistently shown that biological age can differ from chronological age by 10 years or more in either direction, and that the factors that predict lower biological age are almost exactly the same factors that predict the retention of the 5 abilities we have discussed today. Physical activity, purposeful mental engagement, strong social connections, quality sleep, and a nutrient-rich diet all appear to slow biological aging at the cellular level, and people who score well on these lifestyle factors in their 60s and 70s tend to retain physical and cognitive function that more closely resembles someone a decade younger. This means that someone who is 75 chronologically but has maintained these habits may genuinely be aging as though they were 65 biologically, and this distinction is what the retention of these 5 abilities reflects in practice. The social dimension of healthy aging also deserves more attention than it typically receives in conversations about physical and cognitive health. The 5 abilities we discussed are all primarily individual capacities, things that can be assessed and worked on at the individual level. But the research on healthy aging consistently finds that social connection is not merely a pleasant addition to a healthy life. It is a biological necessity for optimal aging outcomes. Chronic loneliness and social isolation are associated with faster cognitive decline, weaker immune function, increased inflammation, and higher overall mortality in ways that are comparable in magnitude to major physical risk factors. People who maintain the 5 abilities we discussed between 60 and 80 are almost always people who are also socially engaged, who have relationships that matter to them, who feel known and valued by others, and who are connected to something larger than their own individual experience. This suggests that while the 5 abilities are real and meaningful markers of beating aging, they exist within a broader context of how a person is living their life overall, and that context is as important as any individual ability. The environment in which aging happens is another factor worth acknowledging, because it interacts with all 5 of the abilities we have discussed in ways that are often underappreciated. People who live in environments that encourage walking, that are designed for safety and accessibility, that offer opportunities for social connection and intellectual engagement, and that support access to healthy food and good medical care, age differently from those who live in environments that are isolated and sedentary promoting. This does not mean that environment determines destiny, because the habits and choices within any environment matter enormously. But it does mean that creating and protecting an environment that supports physical activity, cognitive engagement, social connection, and purposeful living is itself a meaningful act of investment in healthy aging, as important in its own way as any individual health habit. People who maintain these abilities are almost always people who have stayed physically active in consistent, varied, and meaningful ways throughout their 60s and 70s, who have kept their minds engaged with learning, conversation, problem-solving, and creative activity, who have maintained meaningful social connections and relationships, who have prioritized sleep and managed chronic stress, and who have eaten in ways that support rather than undermine the biological systems on which these abilities depend. These are not secret or surprising findings. They are the same factors that appear repeatedly across the longevity and healthy aging literature, which itself suggests that the path to maintaining these 5 abilities is well mapped, even if it requires consistent effort and intentional choice rather than simply happening on its own. It is also important to say something about what to do if one or more of these 5 abilities has declined for someone in the 60 to 80 age range, because the message of this video is not intended to create discouragement. For most people and most of these abilities, meaningful improvement or at minimum stabilization is genuinely possible through appropriate changes in activity, lifestyle, and in some cases medical management. Balance can be meaningfully improved through specific balance training, yoga, tai chi, and exercises that challenge the proprioceptive and vestibular systems. Grip strength and overall muscle function can be improved through resistance exercise even well into the 80s. Recent memory can be supported through mental engagement, improved sleep, better nutrition, stress reduction, and in some cases through identifying and addressing reversible medical contributors. Cardiovascular endurance can be rebuilt through gradual, progressive aerobic activity even after extended periods of inactivity. And a sense of purpose can be rekindled through intentional choices about how time is spent, what relationships are invested in, and what contributions feel meaningful. None of this is simple, and none of it happens without effort. But the biological plasticity that makes improvement possible in each of these domains does not disappear at 60 or 70, and the willingness to engage with these habits is itself one of the most reliable expressions of the 5th ability we discussed. Before we close, it is important to say clearly that this video is for general educational and informational awareness only. None of what we have discussed constitutes medical advice, and any concerns about physical function, memory, cardiovascular health, or other health-related abilities should always be discussed with a qualified healthcare provider who can assess your individual situation comprehensively. If this video gave you a new and more meaningful way to think about what beating aging actually looks like between 60 and 80, please share it with someone in your life who needs to hear this, because this kind of awareness is most valuable when it reaches people while they still have the most time and opportunity to act on it. If you found this video helpful, please like it and subscribe to Dr. William Hart Health for more videos like this every day.